So good evening, everyone. Thank you again for coming for another meeting of our Pikesville Revitalization Action and Committee meeting. Yeah, I think there's a few people, or maybe just one or two folks that are new or that haven't been on. So if you wanted to unmute and just introduce yourselves and mainly just say if you're with a certain community association.
Yes.
Or
go ahead, Leslie. I'd like to introduce Leslie Portnoy. She's joined the Streetscape and Facade Committee. She was an art teacher at McDonough for many years, and she could be a real asset to our group. But Leslie is here tonight.
Thank you.
Kristen.
Oh. Hi. Hi. I'll introduce myself. Hi, Leslie. I'm I'm Martha Nathanson, and I'm here tonight representing LifeBridge Health. And thanks for inviting me, Michelle. Look forward to working with you all.
Thank you so much, Martha. We're really excited to have you. Anyone else? I think those were the couple folks I saw.
Michael, you're muted.
Michael.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yep. Hi.
Okay, Michael Wilmuth Carton. I'm with the Old Cork Green Spring Improvement Association and Pikesville Green Spring Community Coalition. And I really just joined to back up Neville because I wasn't certain that he'd be able to join this evening. So I'm just going to be an observer.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Anyone else? Okay, and just let me know if anyone has a problem with their microphones. I was just going through and sort of muting everyone who wasn't unmuted because I was trying to be better about that myself too, so there's no background noise. So the other thing we had just as an introductory item was there was a few folks who were saying that they wanted to delve a little bit more deeper into some more direct business outreach. And what we had talked about is sort of starting with a possible Pikesville Business Alliance, which actually the county planning department had formed before. There was a few business members who would get together monthly and kick around ideas. And we've talked about sort of reviving that. So I didn't really want to have a full discussion about it, but I just wanted to see if there was any sort of show of hands of any volunteers who might want to help with that kind of effort. It would be more sort of direct business engagement, like I said, possibly getting a roundtable, maybe also looking into some of the more free pop-up events, some of the more immediate action items that were just like a little bit more impactful with the businesses. So if you guys also want to use your raise your hand like Mel is doing, or if you also just want to physically raise your hand, I can just try to get a quick group together and then I will reach out to everyone. Ruth, are you trying to mute? Yeah.
Michelle?
Wait, hold on one sec. Yeah, hold on one sec. Let me unmute Ruth.
I have a question, and maybe it's for
come
another time, but why wouldn't the Economic Vitality Committee be paying attention to exactly these kinds of initiatives? I'm not saying that there shouldn't be a roundtable, but it just seems that we have a subcommittee for that.
If I could, Michelle, can you hear me?
I don't want to get into such a deep discussion about it because I know some of the
other time. Yeah,
I will let Mel certainly respond because you asked, but I know that some of the folks did think that it was sort of maybe cross a few kind of committees, and some of the committees were thinking about longer range projects. So there were some folks thinking about just sort of getting started on some more immediate action items, and it might not necessarily be, we might not keep the group the way it is, but just to get some volunteers to get going. But Mel, if you want to go ahead. Yeah, I would certainly welcome involvement. I know some of the people who are involved. Just a quick question, and I'll let them take that initiative. But quick question, aren't they already represented by the chamber? So what the county, when we had stood up, planning had stood up a Pikesville Business Alliance, you know, the chamber is a membership organization. So while it represents and it has the interest of all Pikesville, and we work really closely with them, this was something that was sort of initiated by planning. So there's no, you know, dues, there's, you know, no any kind of fee structure. So sometimes it's the same members who are as the chamber and sometimes it's not. So, but it's just more narrowly focused also on the Pikesville Commercial District. Okay, so if you guys, any show or raise a hands or you want to mute. Okay, see Deb. John. Anyone else I'm missing?
Do you see Lynn there? Do you see Lynn?
I know I'm switching between the two screens, so I'll add Lynn. Thank you. Oh, now I see your hand. Okay, great. So I have Lynn, Jack, Deb. Right, is that accurate?
Thought you got me as well.
Oh yeah, and Mel. Okay. Okay, great. So thank you all. Like I said, I will follow up after the meeting. So then we just wanted to go to
You should have me, Tom.
Tom. Okay, great. Thanks, Tom. So the next is subcommittee report outs. We have 5 minutes of sort of report out, 5 minutes of discussion. We don't have to be that strict, but we're going to try and be strict at least to around 10 minutes per subcommittee. And we just put them in alphabetical order. So starting with design and streetscape, Kristen and Deb, the co-chairs. So if you just, basically this time is, like I said, 5 minutes per report out, 5 minutes discussion isn't a lot of time, but the goal is basically just to give an overview and update of what you've been working on to share with the group. So I will turn it over to either one of you guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. So the Streetscape and Design group, we've put together the project summary form that Larry and Michelle sent out. We've filled it out and sent it in, submitted it. Our what we've been working on is kind of our ask is to hire a public art and placemaking consultant that would, and we're working with the Armory Foundation with this. We are vetting a consultant that would cross a couple goals off the list, and that with the idea or the intent that the Pikesville Armory Foundation would also hire the same consultant on their terms, but the same consultant, so that we would have a unified look of the Armory and the commercial district in Pikesville. A couple goals that we have that this art consultant will cover are goal 1, creating a Pikesville identity and marketing campaign. Goal 2, which would be streetscape and facade improvements, identify comprehensive physical improvements, help identify where to place public art and signage and wayfinding. Also, goal 10, develop a roadmap to obtaining a state designated district. So it covers a lot of different goals, and we are currently in the vetting process. We have a couple different partners that we're talking to, and so we don't have a budget per se, but we're coming up with a nice list of a task list, and that's what we're at now. And Deb, if you have any gaps you want to fill in.
You're muted, Deb. Deb is muted.
I think the only thing that I would add is that we're also looking for project management help from our consultant if possible. That would be help in obtaining grants if necessary, and in working with the state and the county for permits and things like that. And then also just walking the steps through. So we're not asking for someone to come in just with ideas. We want on the ground help.
Very good. Yep.
So you guys done for your report out?
Yep.
Okay. Mel, you had a question. Like I said, we still have a few more minutes left for any design and streetscape questions.
You're muted.
There we go. Sorry, just a quick question. I noted there were maybe 2 or 3 goals or asked that I thought I heard. The identities, goal 1 and goal 10,
Mhm.
and management help. I'm not sure if you're asking for 3 things, 1 thing, I'm not certain.
So it is one ask. The ask is to fund a public art consultant. And that
Okay.
consultant would cover several goals. Goal 1, the Pikesville identity and marketing campaign. Goal 2, streetscape and facade improvements, which is
I see.
the big umbrella. That covers some landscaping, artwork, wayfinding, lots of things. That's where the consultant comes in. They have the greater vision. They can help with permits. The other goal is goal 10, which is develop a roadmap for obtaining state designated districts to help if Pikesville wants to be an A&E district or something like that.
Oh, I didn't hear that part of it. Okay, that's new.
So it's one ask, and that's for a public art consultant who will help cover 3 goals.
I see.
Michelle, will we share, since these project summary forms are filled out and submitted and everything, will you share them with everyone so that if they have questions, first they can look at the project summary and some of their questions might be answered in the written material?
Yeah, once we go, the subcommittee report out section tonight is just to give a more broader overview and update, see if anyone has any questions. And then Larry's going to review a little bit about the form and the process. And so certainly, right, the intention is all of this to be sort of open and transparent, and how the forms will be reviewed, and they will certainly be shared, because in order to hopefully vote on them, right, you need the information.
I also think if we have do we still have a minute left? I can't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, we started a few minutes late. So
Okay.
if it's
Well, go
is it a
ahead.
design and streetscape question?
Yeah, and it wasn't a question. I just wanted to reiterate the partnership with the Armory, that they would pay for their share of the consultant. We would pay for our share, but it would be a joint vision from Slade Avenue to Old Court Road, looking at opportunities for public art and place making and wayfinding, that so that the Armory is an integral part of the whole identity and branding campaign.
Great. Any other design and streetscape questions? Okay, we can move on to economic vitality.
Yeah, thank you. The Economic Vitality Committee, as you all have seen, our recommendations that was put forward. I did put it in the project form that Larry produced for you all to see as well, but in a narrative fashion, there certainly is a lot of common ground between the goals that the Economic Vitality Committee is presenting with the Design and Streetscape Committee regarding artwork and a joint vision along the entire corridor, including the Armory. The committee wishes to see move forward on producing artwork along the commercial corridor, including murals and wayfinding, and murals in the back of the Armory, including those garage doors. The first step, as Kristen and Deb have arrived at, is to hire an arts consultant to evaluate all the elements in planning such an end result. We have a second priority, and that comports with the first priority comported with, the action plan guide goals 1F, 1G, and 1H. The second priority that we recommend is comports with goal 9F, and that is beginning of exploration of redevelopment of what has been called, and I think Howard actually dubbed it, the Pikes Peak Promenade, a pedestrian-friendly area lined with shops parallel to Reisterstown Road from the state police through onto the giant property. And the first step towards that goal is what we're recommending and asking is to have a professional depiction produced of what this Pikes Peak Promenade might look like once redeveloped. And that would enable a productive pitch to potential investors. What both these goals do is accomplish something bold relatively soon and relatively inexpensively, but mostly what they present as an opportunity to achieve the biggest bang for the buck in moving forward positively towards a truly transformative action plan that unifies the entire as vision, particularly around artwork. There are several documents that are predicate to all this. Of course, most of you were involved and know of the vision plan that was adopted by the Governor's Commission. Subsequent to that, with community engagement as paramount as the county executive has reiterated time and time again, a depiction of the site was produced by the consultant that identified precisely that. And that was done in 2019. Furthermore, that consultant at a September 2019 meeting of the Armory Advisory Group said painting murals in the back of that property, even on the garage doors, does not interfere with the ultimate comprehensive use. The legislation is clear with regards to special consideration on that artwork be given to the Armory. And now most recently, this bond bill language that says that the back of that Armory and the artwork will be included in the initial phases of redevelopment of that Armory. So that's, we have a tentative budget to paint 30 or 35 of those garage doors. They're 9 feet by 12 feet, and roughly about 30 of those or 35 of those would cost about $75,000 to produce. If we had to hire a professional to do the graphic depiction of that Pikes Peak Promenade, it would be about $10,000 is the ballpark figure that we have come up with. So that's the long and the short of it. And I ask for your endorsement of these on behalf of the committee. I ask for your endorsement of going forward with these priorities, either in conjunction with or collaboration with the design and streetscape recommendations, which are a lot of common ground between the two of us.
Well, Kristen, you have a question, and just to be clear, we're, this part we're sort of reporting out, and the rest of the meeting, we're going to sort of talk about the process a little bit more of sort of voting on these projects. But Kristen, go ahead.
Right, we're open for discussion now, correct?
Yeah. Economic vitality discussion.
So a question for Mel, about Pikes Peak Promenade. Why has that been the focus rather than the storefronts that we currently have? It feels like they've might have been neglected, and then you're building this cool thing next to it, which would be nice, but it seems like that's going to be more expensive, drive people away from the shops that are already there. And when the shops that are there do need help, they need more tenants. There's a lot of vacancies. They're kind of run down. Is there a plan do you think it would be better shifted if instead of the Pikes Peak, we put that money towards what's already there and making that better?
Thank you very much, Kristen. It's a good question. Yes, this would increase competition for the existing commercial areas along Reisterstown Road. The modern planning principles are pedestrian friendly, as most of you probably recognize. Reisterstown Road will never be a pedestrian friendly promenade. It would take an enormous amount.
I have an issue with that statement. Sorry.
Well, hold on to it.
Okay.
So anyhow, to create that you'd have to have parallel roadways. There is no commercial, or all the roadways parallel to Reisterstown Road are residential. One would have, listen, no one better than me understands the value of creating that pedestrian-friendly promenade on Reisterstown Road. It was pretty much a dream of mine over 40 years ago. I learned that in order to do that, you needed a parallel roadways. And there was no way to do it without enormous condemnation on both sides of that existing road. Therefore, to accomplish a critical enough mass of pedestrian-friendly shopping, this idea came up about 9 or 10 years ago of using that stretch that currently exists as a walkway, if you walk it, from the state police all the way through onto the giant property. You now have created, if you incentivize it, it doesn't cost the county a nickel. What happens is the county and Kimco combined own about 90% of the property. That makes the negotiations much easier than trying to buy up scores of houses along each side of that Reisterstown Road. The county offers the ability to front the money for a parking structure on one or both ends of that walkway. And now you have allowed the property owner, mostly Kimco, or in conjunction with another investor, to invest money to produce leasable spaces along this pedestrian walkway, lined with shops or perhaps restaurants, so that that property owner now gets the value of converting that, what used to be parking, into leasable commercial space.
Mel, time for questions.
And I just want to let you know, we have like 2 minutes, okay, for this.
Kristen,
for
have
this
I
discussion,
responded
and
to
then we
your
have to move
question?
on to-
Kristen, have I responded to your question?
Yes, thank you,
Thank
Mel.
you.
May I?
Okay, Ruth, go ahead quickly, you can, yeah.
Yes. I understand that the asks for this pot of money are supposed to be for projects that are shovel ready and can be done within a year. And my understanding of this pedestrian walkway idea, which I love, is that it is all predicated on the library and senior center moving, that building being vacated. It's a long-term plan. It's a wonderful plan, but there are a lot of chess moves between point A and point L or whatever. You know, it's not shovel ready. It's not a 1-year thing. It's not a modest amount of money. It is something, but it's to me, it's not the kind of project that fits into the format that we were asked to look at for this pot of money that we're trying to divide up right now. That was not a question. It was just a comment.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'll let Jaren chime in really quick, and then we'll move on, because like I said, we're not deciding on the projects now. This is just sort of the subcommittee reporting and discussion. But Jaren, if you want to go ahead quickly.
Yeah, really quick. I mean, first of all, real quick, I just want to say that I do think that there is a feasible way to make Reisterstown Road pedestrian friendly, but I don't want to unpack that right now because we only have like 60 seconds. Mike, I do have a question though about this, because I don't, it sounds great. Like the idea of a pedestrian promenade, even if it's off Reisterstown Road, I think has the potential to have a positive impact on the surrounding area. So in theory, it sounds really good, but I don't understand any of the details of where this would actually be laid out. So like kind of along the lines of Ruth's statement, like, does this mean we have to bulldoze some buildings, or is there space for this somewhere that I don't know about? I just don't understand where it is. And you're muted again, Mel.
Get this straight. So, Jared, I'd love to take you for a walk along this promenade.
I'll
It's
take a walk.
miraculous. It's miraculous.
Okay.
Secondly, I'm glad you like the idea in general, and I'm glad Ruth loves the idea in general. But let me clarify. You don't have to necessarily. Yes, that was my idea. Wasn't originally to move the library and the senior center to the armory. That all made a lot of things work a lot easier, but it's not necessary to move both of them. You could theoretically still have something, maybe the library, on a reconstructed second floor of the library. You'd have commercial space perhaps on the first floor of that library, and then you'd have a parking structure there, and then extending that walkway from there all the way through the Revenue Authority lot, onto Foley Lane, onto First Watch property. Again, it doesn't cost the county a nickel. What the ask is, to just make sure we're clear, the ask is not, of course, to try to get this to fruition. The ask is to have a rendering done of what this redevelopment might look like. Again, the value is to be able to pitch investors with something like this idea. So that's what the ask is. And we think it's only, you could probably get it done pro bono by somebody, but it might be $10,000 to produce such a rendering. That's the ask. So that can be done tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, can you just give maybe a list of like street names? Like, how is it oriented? Like, I have no idea how this, like, what the vision is for this.
Michelle, would you like me to go into detail? I know you're pressed for time.
I could even share out like Google.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I know you youngins do that stuff like nothing. I'd love to take you for a walk. That's the best way.
Well,
Yeah. Another.
yeah, I don't want to have the other subcommittees lose out on their time. But so Mel, I don't know if you could use the chat feature also. You know, I mean, like how Jaren's saying, even just street names or anything. You know, if you want to put in the chat a little bit more
All right.
descriptive, or like you said, he's happy to walk with you. You know,
Yeah.
another time.
Love to
too.
take anybody for a walk.
Okay.
Okay.
Maybe that's
Raise
what
your
we'll
hand
do.
if you want
Okay.
one.
I'm raising my hand. It's still raised. I'm
All
in.
right, good.
Okay, great. Neville, are you ready to give us an
Howard
infrastructure
wanted to
update?
say something. Howard.
Oh,
wanted to speak.
Okay, but then, like I said, yeah, we really got to, keep moving along, but go on.
Okay, let me tell you
No.
how this project started, because it fits in with the discussion that we've just been having quite nicely. We set up some objectives. There were 8 objectives that were set up. And this came from a meeting that Mel and Howard Needle held at the Pikesville Library. And we've got a lot of ideas coming through, and as a result, our committee, which was with Neil Noble, and I'm sorry, the name escapes me, but basically with 3 of us, and we worked on this, and we looked at these objectives. So let me just start with this, and then I'll move right into the meat of this business. Okay, improve traffic flow and parking. These are objectives. Allow left-hand turns at intersections with traffic lights. Give the area a village feel. Make it safe to walk along and cross to the other side of Ricestown Road. Now, Mel has told us that it's very hard to cross the road, and it is indeed. So there is a challenge, especially associated with this. But I think we're on the way to overcome these things. Integrate the area with a variety of destination stores and places that can be readily reached. Make the armory an integral part of the plan. Develop a long-term template for incremental improvements to the appearance of the area. Coordinate with the County Planning Office, the State Highway Administration, and Izzy Patoka, our council person. Okay, now, basically, we developed these objectives and then tried to figure out how to implement them. And we came up with all the kinds of ideas that you guys have been talking about tonight, that if we had a walkway here or something like that. But question was, would we be able to come up with something that was feasible? And in order to determine feasibility, what we did was we took and stretched Ricestown Road onto a piece of paper that was 9 foot long by 4 foot wide. And we looked at this and we said, look, everything has got to be able to fit in place. If it doesn't fit in place, it's not feasible. And so this was our objective, to actually go through this business by business, house by house, sidewalk by sidewalk. And we came up with this, and we did this not on the whole stretch, but just 1/3 of the stretch. And that gave us an idea to see if 1/3 of it was feasible. Perhaps, or probably, the other 2/3 would be feasible as well. Now, the idea on this was to get SHA interested in this, because SHA has a lot of talent. They have a lot of creativity. The question is, could we get them excited about this project? So we met with them on June the 15th, and we got from them. And on August the 15th, they gave us the preliminary report. So that was August 15th, which is just a few days ago. So on the 15th, I'm sorry, the 17th, on the 17th, we met with Dana Stein and a representative from Shelley Hettelman's office. And we said, okay, can we get them interested in this thing? And it was very important that we knew that SHA was willing to take an interest in this. So we shared all the information from SHA. And basically, some of it was positive, most of it was negative. So let me just give you an idea. It was sort of 30% feasible, 70% not quite feasible. Okay. So our objective was to switch that from 30 to 70, 30 and 70, to 80% feasible and 20% not feasible. So the question is, could we do this? And we kind of put this challenge to SAJ, and they said, well, we can try. And they said, but the trouble is that we have run out of funding now. We have spent 2 months working on this project, and they came up with an incredible amount of detail. And we got to the point in which we said, okay, how much would you need? And they said about $85,000. And that would be about $60,000 to get a consultant to work on this, and $25,000 for supervision and direction from SHA. So that was the game plan. And so when we met with Dana and Shelley, or Shelley's actually a chief of staff, they suggested that they could try to get there. So I worked with Dana, and I believe he has made a request to meet with Mr. I think it's Ports, who is the head of SHA for the county. And they're going to see if they can come up with the money to do this study. Because I know, or had known, because Josephine told me earlier, that we could not use PRAP funds for studies. PRAP funds had to be used for hardware. And that's fine, okay? So we thought we'd do it this way. So the bottom line is that we had these reports that were kind of interesting, because if we could make use of the talents of these people and take all these walkways and passageways and stuff that are in Pikesville, and incidentally also need to take into account bicycle paths, because that is now mandated. So we figured we could come up with something that was definitely feasible. And so the game plan is to get the funding and then give them the time to do the study and come up with a recommendation. Now, the reason why I wanted to mention this early is because this is going to affect sidewalks. It's going to affect right-of-ways. It's going to affect the ability to do things the way we'd like to do them, and it may not turn out that way, because if a property owner objects to this, it might not be possible. But if we can get everybody to look at this in detail and figure out, hey, is this something you want? Is this something Pikesville needs? If somehow or other you can believe in this, that we can come up with something, I think we have something kind of interesting going on. So we're talking about, as I say, rights of way. We're talking about these recreating of the sidewalks. So to some extent, this is going to affect the way that you see and consider Pikesville. In other words, this would be a different Pikesville. We're talking about a Pikesville that would be recreated in 5 to 10 years. And we can basically take and be as creative as possible and say, what would we like to see here in 5 to 10 years? And if we can do it, if we can get the funding, it's possible. Now, here are two couple
Neville,
of
I
things.
just want to do a time check because it's almost like the whole 10 minutes and we haven't had a chance for anyone to ask any questions. So is it okay? And we want you to rest and and limit some of your talking too. So is it okay if we could just pause for a couple of questions because then we're going to have to move on to other
Absolutely.
subcommittees.
Absolutely.
Okay. And so quickly, I think I saw Mel's hand first and then
Yeah,
Kristen.
Yeah, great. First of all, as we noted many, many years ago, this has been a heartfelt project by Neville and his other committee members and a piece of fantastic work. We laid out kind of what ifs and kind of how about this and how about that, and Neville in his engineer brain laid it out specifically. So a couple of points. As far as getting cooperation with the property owners, the only thing that works is a quid pro quo. In other words, when we did the first revitalization plan, we got a lot of improvements on the facades of the properties in return for the county spending money improving the streetscape. This is also an improvement, and we can use that as leverage, hopefully, to get property owners' cooperation. Secondly, if we're improving the existing environment, that's it, environment for the existing property owners, that kind of responds a little teeny bit to Kristen's concern. And I'm sure the chamber has this concern about, quote, introducing competition. Competition is good, folks, but we wouldn't do anything we can to ameliorate any ill effects of that competition. And this street approach is one of them that might suffice. So that's all I had to offer. Just an incredible job.
Kristen, you want to go ahead?
Okay, yes. Thank you, Neville, for all your hard work. I know it's a lot. I appreciate it. You definitely put a lot of thought into this and been tackling this for a while. If I remember correctly, reading your status report, it sounded like median strips were considered and removing the poles to put them behind the buildings. My concern about median strips is about inviting panhandling. I was driving, I've seen Westminster Main Street has kind of the same amount of size that we have. One lane of parking, one northbound, one southbound, and a turn lane in the middle. And then the parking lane has bumpers with planters in them. That would be that would solve the left-hand turn problem. You wouldn't need to put median strips and you wouldn't need to remove the poles either. And what this is getting at is that we really should have a bigger discussion about this. I think it's I think you have a great plan and we need more input. I do think we should have one whole meeting dedicated to your plan so we can really dig into it. I thought a PowerPoint might be a way to go so that everyone could be involved. But if that's not the case, we can do it in person, but it should be one meeting just because it's such a big deal, such a big important thing. But those were my thoughts immediately, just about the cost of putting the poles in the back. Adding the 5th lane might be really just tremendous amount of money. Whereas you could easily just do one northbound, one southbound, turn lane in the middle, parking lane with bump outs with planters. And that's my suggestion.
It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit without moving those poles.
But
Doesn't fit.
remember, we don't want to
Right.
get like too detailed. What Kristen is saying also is that a bunch of folks had proposed to really have a further either discussion virtually or in person or in both with Neville to really understand this plan and dig deep, just sort of how we said, Mel, other folks that want to understand the Pikesville Promenade, we can do separate meetings, but I didn't want to cut you off, Neville, if you have a couple quick statements, but like I said, we really gotta move on. But
Yeah,
if you did
I
want to
just
just
like to
close
make
this out for
a
your
couple of comments, Michelle. There are objectives and objections to what can come up from this. But I believe that if we study this project sufficiently to feel that we can overcome these problems, we will do something special. Now, this is not an inexpensive project. As I say, it's probably 5 to 9, 10 years. This project is estimated at the moment by SHA at $18 to $24 million. Okay, so this is not an insubstantial amount of money that we're talking about. But however, we're talking about a grand project to make a big difference in Pikesville, and there is, fortunately, federal money available. But we have to study it, and we have to basically develop the requests for this kind of thing. So there is work to do, no question about it. But the important thing is it's not just the work that needs to be done. We need to work with the business owners and all of you in order to make this happen. So that is the key. So when you ask me to make this presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, I'll be happy to share it with you. And I'd like to get your candid input on this. Do you feel that this is something that is going to make a difference, that you feel is very advisable because it's going to transform Pikesville in that period of time? So these are the kinds of things that you have to make the decisions on them. We can create the technical stuff. In other words, we can get drawings up, we can get proposals and all the rest of the stuff, but we need you to help us to develop the plan that you feel will fit with Pikesville's objectives.
Okay, thank you so much, Neville. I see Tom has his hand up, but I just wanted to check. Larry, I know you had emailed me at one point that you weren't sure you wanted this time for an organization update because you're on the agenda later. Is that still the case? I want to give you the chance.
Yeah, I will. I was hoping to use this time for later, but if there's urgent stuff to discuss for the other committees, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I think the important thing, Michelle, to consider over here is we want to integrate the Armory with this whole thing. So we're talking about a funding figure that is comparable to what's going to be put in to the Armory. So now the question is, how do we integrate everything and make this artistic center that we're talking about, make something that we can be proud of?
Okay, Tom, did you want to go ahead real quick?
First of all, Neville, congratulations. I think hard work, but an outstanding teaser about what to think about. I concur that this needs to be a significant person-to-person meeting with a modest size group and then with the community itself, because a community needs to buy into 5 or 6 years of god awful traffic going through Pikesville, 5 or 6 years of constant commotion and construction, and all of the issues that will mean, and that needs to be understood before we all buy off on it. But I think,
Absolutely. Very important point. Very important.
but I think this is potentially a transformative step that will support other steps. And I think we need to get very familiar with what Neville's proposing. I've seen some preliminary drawings, and I understand that we may want to think about how to do it differently, but the concept needs to be fleshed out and accepted, and then we can start worrying about how it's a $50 million project or a $5 million project to start with, and slowly move on to it. And I'm very aware of the concern about islands in the middle. Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone. Neville, it's good to see you, and hopefully you'll get some get some press. So I know Larry had said that what the organization subcommittee has been working on is basically embedded in our agenda. So instead of in lieu of an actual report out, you know, he'll be facilitating the later discussion. And I don't see Ed or Heidi on here for promotion unless I'm wrong, but I know the chamber has been really focused on their upcoming 5K, and they also had that electrical fire in their building, so they've had a lot on their plates recently. So
Now,
if we hear
Ruth is
anything,
having it's turning into a windmill.
You're muted. You're muted, Ruth.
Howard has raised his hand for 2 different presentations at this point and has not been recognized. And I know it's hard to keep track of everybody, but I really think that people, especially people who have intimate knowledge of some of these things, should be given an opportunity to ask their question or make a comment. So if you could recognize Howard, if he wants to speak, I think I would make me feel better.
okay, yeah, I mean, if people can try and use the electronic hand, that's a little bit easier for me to see versus now, because I can't see everyone's squares all at once. But yeah, if Howard wants to go ahead, and then we'll skip to the review of the project summary form after Howard speaks, and we'll give it over to Larry. But Howard, if you want to go ahead real quickly.
Howard is muted.
Can you hear me
I
now?
unmuted you. Yeah, I unmuted you. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to comment briefly on Neville's accomplishment. We have gone to the State Highway Administration several times over many years.
Thanks, Howard.
And hardly gotten a warm reception, if any response at all. It's shocking that he has been able to get the detailed response that he has received. And I'm anxious to see the details of that. The point I want to make is, although it's expensive, Pikesville is entitled to it, and we should demand it. The Congress recently passed a huge infrastructure bill, and the State Highway Administration is probably now awash in money. And Pikesville needs to make a claim to its share. And I think that the strong leadership of our elected officials, from Shelley Heddleman and Dana Stein and John Carden and Izzy Patoka, have to be very involved in this effort and flex their muscles and show that Pikesville deserves this kind of improvement to its main artery. This is a huge undertaking, and we deserve it. And thank you, Neville, for what you've done and are going to do.
Thank you, Howard.
So much, Howard. Larry, if you wanna, I'll kick it off to you for item number 3. And we put in the agenda, the 6 steps that the organization subcommittee had also been discussing in terms of the project form. So I just wanna highlight that too, but go ahead, Larry. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Michelle. And I just shared the screen with some of the items I'm going to go over. I'm just going to take the next couple minutes to briefly go over, not specifically the project summary form, but the project evaluation process that was proposed at the last Action Plan Committee meeting, in which there was consensus around, just to refresh everyone's memory and make sure we're all on the same page. We put this together to make sure that we have a transparent and objective process so that we can justify how the projects were evaluated and selected to be funded. So number one, and this again reflects what Michelle included in the agenda, the worksheets, rather the project summary forms in this process have to be completed, agreed on, or voted upon in your subcommittee, and then forwarded to the organization subcommittee. The organization subcommittee will then review the project summary forms and evaluate them using a rubric. We're still developing the rubric, and it's going to go to the Action Plan Committee for review, feedback, and approval before it's decided upon. Nothing we do in the organization subcommittee is dictatorial. We come up with recommendations, we present them to the Action Plan Committee for buy-in, feedback, and then a vote. After we've reviewed, use the rubric to evaluate the project summaries, where you'll make those recommendations to the Action Plan Committee. And then the final step is, again, for the Action Plan Committee to review, give feedback, ask questions, and then vote on what projects they want to be funded, or this committee wants to be funded, how much the funding amount will be, and that type of thing. I wanted to give a reminder too, Michelle mentioned that we had said that only projects with money that require funding need to use the form, but we're recommending that all projects fill out these forms so that as we move forward, we'll have a really fleshed out idea of what it's going to take to implement different projects as we prioritize based on, again, the action plan in the PRAP. And there was some discussion via email about a deadline. Originally, we had said we wanted project summary forms by August 15th, and everyone on the call seemed to be okay with that. But of course, we didn't receive any project summaries at that point, which is fine. But we do feel that there should be some type of deadline. We've received two of the summary forms already, just today or a couple of days ago. But if we're all going for the same, rather, if we're looking at projects that want to use funding now and start implementation as soon as possible, we recommend that it not just be sort of a first come, first serve project evaluation process, but that we have all the proposals at once so we can evaluate them to see how much money is being asked, how much it's going to cost, how much money do we have, and that type of thing. So we can, look at them in a balanced way and in an objective way. So any questions about that process as it stands? Or comments, feedback? Okay, well then I'm going to move on to the next item, and if anything comes up, please chime in, and we can, just chime in, please. The next agenda item is taking a look at some portions of the draft governance framework that we put together. Again, this is just a draft. It's just some recommendations we have. It's based on take some of the information in the PRAP, and then also we used, just because we're very familiar with it and it's been functioning well, we use the Northwest Baltimore Partnerships governance framework as a guide. We just chose that because it's been very effective, and Michelle and I are very familiar with that. And NWBP is a somewhat similar group, that it doesn't have its own separate 501c3 status, and it's a coalition of various organizations coming together to focus on a particular region. So section 3.1 essentially just lists the current action plan committee member organizations. This isn't anything new. It's just a list of who's at the table. Section 2 is where we start looking at some recommendations from the organization subcommittee. So our recommendations are that the committee should be chaired by the action plan committee should be chaired by an action plan committee elected individual for a 2-year term. We propose that there be a vice chair, a treasurer, and a secretary for the action plan committee, and that these would all be elected. These positions will be elected. That the people occupying these positions would be elected by the action plan committee, and they would have to also be committee members. So I'm going to go sort of section by section to give you a chance to look and give some feedback. We may be able to vote on these sections tonight. We may not be able to, depending on whether we have consensus around them or not. Okay, I'll just keep going until somebody stops. Yeah, Ruth, go ahead. You're muted.
Very quickly, when you say that the officers should be voted on by, it says by the committee members, I think it should say by voting members, which you get to in another section, I know. But right now it says all committee members. That means all the agencies, all the non-voting. So I just think the word voting, there's probably a bunch of places where that has to be noted.
Sure, and we can also wordsmith that. That's a very good point, which will make sense as we move forward down, as Ruth said, in terms of voting and non-voting members and that recommendation. Thank you, Ruth. So the action plan committee will be or is currently structured around having organizational members. So as far as we could see, everyone here at the table is representing a particular organization. We're not here as individuals, we're affiliated with a particular organization. Each committee member organization, we say each committee member organization with voting rights as specified in section 3.5, which is below, will appoint one designated representative and one proxy who can vote in the representative's absence. Each organization will decide who will serve as their designated representative and their proxy on the committee. So essentially, it would be one vote per organization, but that organization can designate who their primary designee is and then who the proxy would be in their absence. That's not going to be dictated by the action plan committee. Or again, this is just our recommendation. Nothing's in stone here. So this here is just some information that's pulled right out of the action plan committee, just to emphasize that. Well, let me do this in the right order, actually. So I'll come back to that. Section 3.3 talks about term limits for committee members, and we're recommending that there will be no term limits for committee member organizations, designated representatives, or proxies. The rationale behind this is that the organizations on the committee are established organizations and that represent constituencies, and there aren't particularly other organizations that could take their place. So there's the PGCC, there's 1,000 Friends of Maryland, Pikesville rather, there isn't another 1,000 Friends of Pikesville type group that could come in and replace them. So the idea is that these were all recruited by the planning department because of the constituencies they represent. That's why we're suggesting that there won't be term limits. And the reason we say no term limits for designated representatives or proxies is we feel that the member organizations should be able to decide for themselves who is going to represent their organization. For example, if the CEO was the representative for a particular nonprofit, we wouldn't want to dictate to the CEO that they have to leave and now select somebody else. Okay, moving on.
I missed that one. Larry, I missed that one. Try that one again. That was a little... Sorry.
No. So essentially, I'm just saying that, or we're recommending that the member organizations don't have a term limit. So PGCC, PI, 1,000 Friends, et cetera, will get to stay on indefinitely. They won't be forced to leave the action plan committee, and that each member organization will get to determine who will be their primary representative and the proxy for the organization. That the action plan committee isn't going to tell a member organization that they have to rotate their representative off the action plan committee. Is that clear?
No, I think you confused me on that second part of it.
Can anybody clear? Michelle, can you speak to that with more clarity?
Yes, I can help explain it. The organization itself can decide if they want to rotate, change who their representative is. there will be no term limit for Colonial Village Improvement Association. Is going to rotate off the committee. They're always going to be, as long as they want to be involved, they will be involved. Thousand Friends, same way. But if Kristen moves to Texas and there's a new president of Colonial Village, then that will probably be the new agreed upon representative.
That's not what I heard.
That's
Thank
what
you. I guess I misheard the first part. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Ruth, for
Explain
clarifying.
that. I feel like Rachel Maddow. Did I explain that well?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so section 3.5, committee decision making. All members of the committee will be notified of a voting date and procedure, giving a heads up to, I mean, where possible, this is our recommendation. We're recommending that each organization, or I should say each voting member organization, will have the opportunity to vote either in person, via telephone, or video conference. And that voting will follow the decision-making requirements. The voting will follow Robert's Rules of Order and what's laid out for how the voting process takes place. Extensive discussion about priorities, projects, and recommendations take place. We're recommending that extensive discussion about priorities, projects, and recommendations take place during the subcommittee meetings, and that the subcommittee chairs report out and bring recommendations to the committee during monthly meetings for approval. This isn't to say that we're going to limit or cut off discussion in the action plan committee about the recommendations brought from various subcommittees, but the goal is that the longer discussions, the 1-2 hour discussions, can be fleshed out in the subcommittees, and that's their purpose. And then they can bring recommendations to the action plan committee for hopefully more expedited discussion and decision making. But again, the intention, again, this is a recommendation, and the intention isn't to set a time limit on how long something can be discussed. If the action plan committee wants to keep discussing, that's in our purview, of course. In terms of voting, so there's been some email discussion about this, and this is of course up for discussion like everything else, but we're recommending that 2/3 of the voting members shall constitute a quorum. Currently, because we have 12 members, of course, that would be 8 people for a quorum. And when members are unable to be physically present, they may fully participate and vote by telephone or video conference. A quorum is required to vote on a motion, and we're also proposing that we need a 2/3 of voting members must vote in the affirmative to pass a motion. That's 2/3 of voting members, we should say, present at the meeting. Now, what's come up is that because we have such a small committee, and I'm realizing we're kind of doing things a little bit backwards. The proposal we'll see farther down is that we don't have the county agencies and elected official representative offices have voting rights on the committee. We'll discuss that thoroughly. But that aside, the idea is that 2/3 of the voting members shall constitute quorum, and that you'll need 2/3 majority of the voting members present to pass a motion. Now, of course, that gets down to a pretty slim margin with 12 people, because it means if you have 8 people show up, you would only need, well, you'd have to round up the 5 point whatever to 6. So you would be able to pass a motion with 6 of the 12 members of the committee. Now we can look at increasing the quorum number and increasing, what's needed to pass. It's just, as we all know, the higher the quorum, the more difficult it is to get people to be there. The higher the, percent for the vote to pass, the harder it may be to pass a vote. But it's in the purview of the action plan committee to figure that. So those are the recommendations. Let's maybe take some time to stop there and talk about quorum and what we need to pass a motion. We'll open it up. And I know there are some thoughts about this. Oh, I'm sorry. Thomas. You're muted.
Hand stayed up there from before, but I think, and please call me Tom. I think we need to be very clear that the voting members, and I got tangled up here. Basically, each organization that is represented is the voting member. Is that correct?
So, we might want to, I think we did things a little bit backwards here. We should probably talk about who we're proposing can vote and then head back to this part, if that's okay with everybody.
I'm asking the question, what
Sure.
is a voting member? Is
So
the
what-
voting member the constituent 12 organizations?
It says,
That's correct.
that's it,
Okay, so there are
If I can-
12 voting members.
correct,
That includes the
That's the-
Baltimore County Planning Department, which
correct.
may or may not want to, which is a governmental body, but okay. So I am comfortable, very comfortable with the concept that of the 12 voting members, 8 must vote. That there must be 8 affirmative votes of the 12 members for something to pass. Now we can discuss what that is, but 8 of these community organizations need to be in favor of any action that we are going to take. I don't care how many people show up for the meeting.
Correct.
If only 8 people show up for the meeting, then you better get a unanimous vote.
Mhm.
Okay, other thoughts on that?
Larry, if I could?
Yeah.
Larry?
And Jack is waiting also, actually. So go ahead, Mel.
Yeah, I think that's the simplest language. That a quorum is 2/3, and for a motion to be approved in the affirmative, there needs to be 8 votes in the affirmative. You could theoretically change it a teeny bit and say 2/3 is a quorum, and a majority of the eligible voters must vote in the affirmative. So that would bring it down to 7. That's 2 possible ways of approaching a real problem, that you could theoretically approve a motion, a matter with only, you say 6, 5.33 members. If you wish to round it up to 6, so be it. But you better say that. At any rate, that's my thoughts. I think you need to improve that language, and it's pretty easy to do.
Jack?
Just word of caution on this. While I understand, what we want to do, if you look at most organizations, unless it's bylaws changes or critical changes to the organization, which require a 2/3 vote, simple majority will generally rule for all other votes. And I understand where Tom and Mel are coming from. But at the same time, you can't tie the hands of the organization to keep it from moving forward.
Jack, just so I'm clear, when you say simple majority, are you talking about a simple majority of the members present at the meeting as long as there's a quorum?
Yes.
Is that 4 or 5? Now you've down to maybe 4 and 5.
You can't, well, I don't think that's true. You have to, the quorum is still 2/3. So
That's
you
8. That's
2/3.
8.
Right, so
That's-
2/3 of 8 is more like 6, not 4.
It's 5.33. If
No,
you wish
but
to round it up to 6, it's fine, but
Well-
that's not what Jack just said. That's
But
not what
no,
Jack
but-
just said. Ruth,
Wait,
that's not what Jack just said.
Okay, one at a time, please. If we could do one at a time, please.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
okay, I would say everyone will have a turn, one at a time, and there's some other people that have their hands up too, so we want to make sure that everyone gets a chance.
So
Yeah. And I
2/3,
just to clarify, Mel, if it's 4-4, it's not going to pass. So it's got to be 5 if there are 8 present.
Okay, got it. But now you're down to 5. Larry was up to 6. I said 7, and Tom said 8. That's where you are. It's a numbers thing, but 4 out of 12 people or 5 out of 12 people is a problem, I think.
but
Okay, hold on, Mel, I just want to say, everyone, we certainly want this to be a discussion, but if we can at least, Mel, you sort of gave your suggestions, Tom, Jack,
I got it.
Ruth
Okay,
is
good
correspond,
enough.
there's some other hands, but if you can just sort of give your your, opinion and suggestion and make sure that everyone else has a turn to voice theirs too.
If I may just respond to the proposals, one of the problems with requiring, for example, 8 people to vote, to vote in the affirmative, if you don't want a proposal, if you oppose something that's going to be voted on, you can just choose not to attend the meeting and deny a quorum, or deny, enough people to pass a vote. And that, it seems like it's open to a lot of, more open to manipulation if you have that 2/3 rule.
Thank you, Ruth. And Kristen, you wanted to say something, right?
No, that was I just took my hand down. That was from before. Sorry.
Okay. So we've got 5, 6, 7, and 8. Michelle, where do we go from here? I mean, I think this is something we'll need to have more discussion about. Are there anyone else have an opinion, any feedback on? Yeah, that is Tom. You're muted.
One brief comment. We are not talking about individuals necessarily here. We are talking about community organizations. And we are talking about a fairly wide-ranging list of community organizations that are involved. Now, not every decision is a major decision, but to take an example of getting down to the brass tacks of getting involved in a Reisterstown Road rebuilding, for example, I don't think you make that decision with anything less than at least 8 of those community. I would almost be willing to say you need to have 10 of those community organizations be on your side. You need to get the buy-in. And I think we need to be very careful to make sure that we do get all that buy-in. Otherwise, this can't work. And I'm very concerned about the fact that we do need a process where we actually do convince each other that the actions are appropriate and need to be taken. Some things don't matter. $10,000 for a consultant study doesn't matter. $20 million or $10 million are committing to a major change in the way Pikesville looks, if you will. That's not up to 5 members of this organization. That was my whole, and I'll shut up.
I concur with Tom. He's on target.
Larry, is it possible to have different categories? I mean, I've never seen this really, but that for the kind of price tag that Tom is talking about, that you have to have 2/3 or whatever number it is, 10 or 8 or whatever. But but for more routine things, then you have another rule. I don't know if that's been done, if that's something that's done.
Does anyone have experience on other boards with that? I don't personally.
2 tiers,
There was a couple of organizations. Yeah, there was a couple of organizations that had a price. Actually, it was mostly about budgetary things. And what they did is if a budget item was under X, it would need less onerous restrictions on how many votes were needed. And if we're over X, it needed a more stringent vote. So that's possible. It depends on a number. It all boils down to a number.
Thanks, Mel. Jack, were you about to say something?
Yeah,
not everything is about money also.
Ruth, we're going to do one at a time. I'm sorry, but Jack has been waiting.
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility to set that up. Normally on a budget approval, you would say anything under, X dollars or anything over X dollars. But I think you also need to look at typical bylaws And the decisions that are made based on a 2/3 majority, such as, changes to the bylaws, such as changes to the board of directors, and what the normal approval process is, which is typically simple majority, so that the board doesn't get its hands tied and can't get anything done because of a couple of people. So that's important to consider as well.
Thank you. Ruth, you wanted to say something?
No, I just that not everything is about money, so you can't always use money as the benchmark for what tier you're in. Sometimes it's a policy thing, or like Jack said, it's very consequential if you're changing the bylaws, but it's not a money cutoff. So I agree that there are sort of standards that a lot of organizations use, and we have to maybe arrive at a, look at some other organizations, not just the Northwest Partnership, but get a sense of what's the standard operating procedure.
Thanks,
Ruth, I was
Ruth,
just,
go on.
oh, go on, Larry.
I was just gonna say, I know we're coming up to the hour, so I just want to, Neville had his hand up, but I didn't know if you wanted to table the discussion. I don't know that we're not ready to vote on the voting, I don't think, the quorum and the
Right,
majority. If we
that's
want to
what I was
vote
thinking.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it was that Ruth, it was sort of a good segue to the organization committee now has sort of a few different recommendations, right? And we can do some more homework and look at some other bylaws. But did you want to, Larry, were you gonna say, was there any sections you wanted to try and vote on? Or do you want to, have the organization subcommittee discuss a little bit further and then come back at a next full committee meeting?
I think that makes sense if everyone's okay with that. And
Yeah,
Neville
I think it makes sense to come back with a kind of a reworked report, and we can all kind of have an open discussion on that as well.
Can I ask the committee?
Sorry, Neville, as I just said,
Sorry.
Neville has been waiting patiently. Can we just let him speak next? You're muted, Neville.
I'm muted? No, I'm not muted, according to this. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me, good. Okay, I was just wondering, among the organizations that are participating in this, such as PGCC, Thousand Friends, et cetera, I wonder if we should have an organization of miscellaneous contributors, such as Jaron Shaw. I'm not sure if he is associated with an organization, but we would like to have him here on this. And so I'm wondering if we could have a miscellaneous group that would put in the people that we really feel would be big contributors.
Thank you, Neville. And I think we definitely want to have that discussion in the near future. And also we have the categories of voting members and non-voting members. So that also gives us some more leeway if that plan committee decides we want to go that way. Thank you. Michelle, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's 7:56, so I know Gane's been patiently waiting. She wanted to give an update from the Department of Planning, so I will turn it over to her.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everyone. So I have a couple of updates for you, exciting news, I hope. So we do have a planner for Pikesville. She's going through the hiring process right now. She's due to start September 19. She comes, can you hear me, Mel?
Yeah, it's slower. It would help me. Slower would help me.
Okay, so we have a planner for Pikesville. She's going to be starting September 19. She comes with a background of housing and community development. We know that we are very excited to have her, and she's also very excited to be working in Pikesville. I will keep you posted. She's through the hiring process right now. And her name is Alexandra, and she's coming from Canada. So another update that I have for you is the trash cans. I know that emailed on Friday, and luckily Friday evening they got delivered. So the Pikesville trash cans are delivered. they're not going to be installed until December. Yes. There's a lot of stuff going on with solid waste management. So because of the current situation with manpower and different projects, they are not going to be installed until December, but I will keep you updated when we have a date for installation. Something else is the mural process that we discussed last meeting. So for the process in Pikesville Design Review Panel area, so if you have a mural project, the process should be, and I can email the group later on so that everything is clear. But the first step is to check with zoning, with the Office of Zoning, to make sure that it's not a sign. Because some of the murals sometimes are considered sign if it's advertisement. So if it's not a sign, the next step would be to check with the Office of the Department of Planning. And planning will review your project as an administrative review. And this is due to the fact that as part of the design, the commercial revitalization guidelines for Pikesville, it states that any facade treatments has to go to DRP for administrative review. And mural is considered a treatment, a facade treatment, and that's the reason why it's going through that process. And I will put all of this in writing so that it's clear for everybody. And I would say, if you have any questions pertaining to planning, you can still send them to me until September 19th, when Alexandra will be on board. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Michelle.
So much, Ganae. Yeah, I was to say those were great updates. So it's 7:59. We put on the agenda that we had a discussion that the September meeting was scheduled for Rosh Hashanah. So what we thought is we'll look at the calendars and send a few dates, maybe by doodle poll, not to discuss this evening. And then that will be the next thing. And then we'll continue the discussion to see about a further meeting, either virtually or in person, to discuss the infrastructure plan, possibly to discuss Mel's Pikes Peak Promenade. There were some questions about that too. But those are the next steps. Just want to reiterate again that the governance structure, what we're sort of hoping reflects the model we're hoping to follow, is that you'll really do a lot of discussion in your subcommittees. So keep that in mind also in terms of email communication. So if you have a lot of thorough discussion in your subcommittees, make sure that on your emails are those subcommittee members. But if you're making a decision, then maybe the subcommittee chair can just, reach out to planning, or if you're speaking as an individual, reach out to planning, just a sort of housekeeping note. But like we're saying, we're hoping to structure ourselves that really the substantive work goes on in the subcommittees. So we will follow up about a September meeting date and further meeting dates. And thank you guys, everyone, for spending so much time online with us and this evening, and we will be in touch. Thank you guys.